Good morning to you. You are watching Issues at Hand on Church of Uganda Family TV. My name is Bruno Edgar Tumuhere. Welcome to this morning's episode. And of course, Issues at Hand is proudly brought to you by Protea Hotel Entebbe. The weekend is here. There's so much you can do as a family. Well, as a couple, married couple, but also as a family with your children. As far as Protea Hotel Entebbe is concerned, you can go for a weekend, go swimming together, go enjoy the gym together, work out together, get some physical exercise. You can also go and meditate together at the lakeside. You can go and enjoy those rooms, very wonderful rooms. You can look at that bed right there at Protea Hotel Entebbe. So if you want to enjoy your weekend, please call the number on your screen and make a reservation and booking, and you'll find yourself having a wonderful testimony or wonderful testimonies this weekend, and we shall be waiting to hear of those testimonies come Monday. But today on Issues at Hand, we are having a conversation about children. Now, in the last segment on Good Morning Family, Daphne was telling us about how we should train our children in the way that they should go. Now, when it comes to children play a pivotal role, one, in the fabric of our nation, but especially as far as the future is concerned. And so it's important for us as parents to understand what some of the plights when it comes to children. Yes, I know some of us say that, well, I'm the parent, my children do what I tell them to do, but we must understand as parents that our children have rights, and we are forebearers and protectors and promoters of these rights. So we must know what these rights are, but we need to also understand where our role comes in as parents when it comes to protecting the abuse of children's rights. So that's what we are having this morning for you, and joining me to have this conversation is Sergeant Gonza Beatrice, who is from the Child and Family Protection Unit when it comes to Uganda Police. You are welcome to Issues at Hand.
Thank you and good morning. I'm Beatrice Gonza from the Office of Child and Family Protection Unit, Chira Road. And I'm here to take you through the children's rights, and we're here even to know, before going to their rights, we are here to know about who is a child. These children we talk of, who are they? Because we are all children when it comes to being a child. In my family where I come from, I'm a child. When I get home, they say our children have come. But we are going to look at these children who are below the age of 18. When we talk about children, we are talking of those ones below the age of 18. And we need now to know, if they are at the age of 18, what are their rights?
Indeed. Now, thank you for telling us about who a child is, and we are going to discuss their rights. But it has come to my understanding that one of the biggest factors as to why a lot of children's rights are abused here in this country is the vice of domestic violence. So can you tell us why it's important, why that is, why it is that domestic violence is the root of the problem? And of course, you can start by telling us what domestic violence is, what are the forms of domestic violence, and what causes domestic violence in families.
Okay. Children are part of families, and even before we look at them being children and their rights, we can now look at the domestic violence part. And the domestic violence we talk about, these are the acts that inflict any pain on one another. It can be psychological, it can be emotional, it can be economical, and it can be sexual. So that any act that inflicts pain on one another is domestic violence.
Yes. So in this case, we are talking specifically about domestic violence on children, because of course, it's domestic violence that happens between the spouses. So those are the forms, and it's interesting. Can you take us through psychological violence? Can you take us through more? Give us more details on the forms, especially when it comes to things like we are all used to physical violence, which is the most common form. But maybe what as parents we need to understand more of as psychological violence, and also that economic violence as well, so that we can best know how to avoid being perpetrators of this violence.
Okay. When it comes, let's start with the physical violence because it's the common. People know about when you're beaten, when you've been assaulted, people take it to be domestic violence. And people come when they have other domestic violence they are going through, but until one is beaten is when somebody will come up and say, I've been tortured physically. Whereas the origin of this physical comes from the psychological tortures, which are always there. For example, if we talk about psychological violence, these are the acts that tortures somebody psychologically. For example, if he's a father, he comes back home, he doesn't provide necessities to the family, then the family will start suffering that psychological torture into them.
Because of lack.
Because of lack. And they will not come up quickly and tell the public that we are going through this until that person has been tortured physically. Until they fought is when they come up to police and said, I'm going through some domestic violence. But when you try to interact with these couples, you will find there is a root cause. For example, if there is lack in the home, if they are not providing well, then it goes to physical. That is psychological. It is an act that touches somebody from inside. By the time it comes on physical, it will be worse. By the time people start quarreling from the house, for example, somebody is not providing necessities, like these are times of going back to school, parents are not providing for their children. The father is running out from his responsibilities. Then the mother will start feeling that torture. Every time, hey, why is this man not doing like this? Why is this father not providing for the children? Then you feel that torture is within. And it goes deep into emotional tortures. After that, you will find people fighting. Then you say, hey, those people have some domestic violence, whereas the origin are the inside tortures which are not seen physically.
Indeed, and that's very interesting because, like you've said, we are used, and people only report when you've been beaten. But we should ensure that either as a child or a spouse, you have to report when you're feeling like there's psychological abuse, when there's also economic and financial abuse in terms of a parent not doing their responsibility to take care of a child, but also something that has affected a lot of children nowadays, and we are seeing it come up a lot, and not just by relatives, because we are used to hearing about uncles who do it or aunties, but also from parents, is the issue of sexual violence. Can you tell us more about that?
Sexual violence, when it comes to the other side of domestic, is very different. When it comes to, it's very difficult. It's different when it comes to the partners. Those are adults who deny themselves sex. That is sexual violence. But when it comes to children, that includes defilement, raping them, harassing them sexually, like touching them. For example, when these children stay in their home, like these people call themselves the uncles, the judges, those ones who go. People entrust their children with these young ones, and they end up harassing them sexually. For example, if this child stays with a judge, they go on and call them my wife, yet these children are young. And you find this uncle harassing this girl, touching, patting on the bumps, touching on the breast, when it comes to children, that is sexual harassment. You harass them sexually. Yes.
So what now? A lot of us, and we've had so many stories about even how house helps, maids, also many other perpetrators of this. But like you said, we have judges, we have uncles, aunties, we have parents who are perpetrators of these forms of violence against children. So the question is, what is causing this? Where does this stem from?
To me,
in your experience,
in my experience, it is poor parenting. Because if you're really in a family with your spouse and your children, you have to protect these children. When we talk about these children having their rights, we don't need to let them go beyond their rights. If you have your children, you have to protect them from all these attacks. If you have them, know how to parent them, know how to talk to your children, give them time, listen to them, whatever they are talking as a parent. Make sure you listen to your children and you protect them. Don't just allow them move anyhow. For example, if it's during holiday, even during school, they are our children who are day scholars. You don't need to just let them go. That it's time for leisure. They move on without your parent guiding them and protecting them. If a child is not well protected, they will end up being abused. They will end up being raped. They will end up being defiled. They will end up joining these groups of drug addicts.
Indeed, and something important you mentioned there is the fact that as parents we have to listen to our children. And for me, it raises a lot of questions in me, because there are many times as parents, again, because we are the authority figures, we think the child should do everything that they say, and their children, and we are not willing to listen to them. So can you explain more on that, and why it's important that we listen to our children, and how those of us as parents who might not be accustomed to listen to our children, how can we start to practice this art of listening to our children?
Okay, thank you. Even before you start listening to them, as a parent, do you know the rights of a child? Because after knowing the right that a child has a right to education, a child has a right to play, a child has a right to clothing, medication, feeding, and whatever, if it's time for praying, then you call this child. You start talking. Interacting with a child brings this child close to you. If you're a child who is aggressive, the child will not come close to you. Like, we are in a situation where so many things are happening outside there. And if you become aggressive and you don't bring your child close, then this child will not even open up to you. Even if this child has been harassed, he will have the fear in him or her to come and tell you that as the border person was taking me, maybe he touched me or he harassed me, because this child has the fear that you are going to harass the child. So lack of communication in between the parent and the child puts a gap in between them.
Indeed, and that's why it's important that we listen to our children, that we develop a friendly, communicable relationship with our children, so that it's easy for them to come to us, especially when it comes to issues like domestic violence. Now, something that will help us understand why we must fight domestic violence as parents against our children especially, is knowing what the effects of domestic violence are on our children. So what do these different forms, psychological, what impact of these different forms, whether psychological, sexual, or physical violence, have on our children? What impact do they have on our children?
These effects, the domestic violence has caused a lot to our children. For example, if in a family, the mother and father are always fighting, are always battering one another, it affects the children. This child will not get education because the parents are not communicating well. They are always annoyed. Even the feeding will be a problem to these children because the mother cannot communicate to the father and tell him that we are lacking ABCD because there is no proper communication in the family. Our children end up suffering. They are always the victim of circumstance when it comes to the outcomes of domestic violence. The father will not communicate to the mother that I don't have money for school fees. If you have, maybe you can put and I will sort it out, because they have that anger. So our children becomes the victims. When it comes to feeding, the same thing. The father can even drive out, leaves the home without feeding their children because he has anger on the wife. And all these ones have made our girls end up on streets. All these ones have made our girls getting pregnant. Early child pregnancy has been caused by the domestic violence in the homes because the parents are not communicating with their children. The parents are not close to their children. These children end up misusing their rights of even hanging out outside. They take advantage of the parents when there is domestic violence in the home. The parents tend to relax, and these children take advantage of the parents. They end up hanging on the street. From the street, they end up getting pregnant. From there, they end up even going for abortion, which can lead to death because of domestic violence in the family. The parents are not caring, they are not minding about their children, and the children end up suffering.
That's true, and as parents, of course, we want to avoid suffering in terms of our children, being inflicted upon our children. So it's important that we listen to what Afande has said in terms of especially starting with listening to our children and having a good family relationship with our children, so we can know where the red flags are, and we shouldn't relax when it comes to our duty of parenting, which we shall get into later on. But you said, Afande, it starts from a place of us understanding the fact that children, that is, have rights. So what are some of these children's rights that we as parents must be aware of?
Children have their own rights by their 5 basic needs, and they are the rights of these children. A right to education, a right to feeding, a right to clothing, a right to medication, and a right to shelter. These 5 basic needs. They have a right to play. There are so many rights. But in this issue, we are telling parents that though they have their rights, don't allow them go beyond their rights. For example, if a child has a right to play, has a right to listen to music, watching TV, a parent should not allow this child to watch a TV throughout the day. Though it's a right, but at least put some limitation and make programs for your children. That's what we call, now you're parenting, you are nurturing a child. But if a child says, I have a right to stay in books, means this child will read from morning up to evening without doing other chores at home. And it will be also an effect. In the future, you'll be a poor parent because you would have not programmed this child, and it goes. Whatever you do to this child is what this child will practice in the future.
Most definitely. And can you break down these rights for us and why they're important? For instance, why is the right of education important to a child? Why is it that my children have to be educated? Why is it that they should be clothed? Because you might take these things for granted, but their parents out there will say, well, as long as I'm feeding them and they have food, we shall manage and they'll be okay.
These rights they are nature rights, because we were born when we know any human being is not supposed to move naked on the street. So if you're a parent and really you don't provide necessities like clothing to your child, then you'll be infringing on this child's right, because they are nature. We were born, we are clothing. We are in a century where people don't move on naked like that. So if you don't provide clothing, I believe you will be infringing on this child's right. If you don't provide education, it's a must. It's the child's right. You have to provide, not that you take these children to more expensive schools like other people say. You have to educate this child into your own limit. Yes.
And the way you can manage, but it's important that we ensure that we are the champions who push for these rights, especially when it comes to our children. Now, that brings me to the subject of parenting, which you pointed out is very important. What about parenting needs to be better as parents when it comes to ensuring that the rights of our children are, one, protected, but are, two, promoted?
As a parent?
Yes. Or what advice would you give to us as parents when it comes to ensuring that we enforce our children's rights?
Yeah. As a parent, we started from the first thing is communication, because when you don't know, when you don't listen to your child, still you will not put these rights into action. When this child comes and tells you this is A, B, C, D, you have to come on board, have good listening skills, know what this child wants, then you put it. Some parents are poor. They are poor parents, because when a child comes and tells them that mommy, ABCD is happening, this child will back off the child. And you will not promote this child's right if you back her off. You have to listen and know my child needs ABCD, and under your own limit, not going beyond. If my child is at a certain big school, but the other one has a limit of taking this child to another school, don't say that it's a right for this child to be in this school. You have to know your limit, your economical status, because if there's economical status differ, yours is different from mine, but I have to take this child to school. Don't say that education is only the rich, it's for everyone. So it's you, the parent, promote this education by listening to your child and by discussing with your child. Children, we start discussing with these children when they are young. Don't do this, don't do this, I think we can do this. You're bringing the child close to you.
And what else apart from our communication should we practice as parents so that our children can enjoy these rights that have been provided, for one, by God, but by two, the law?
Educating these children about the laws of Uganda, them knowing that if you do this is bad. Apart from that, you have to tell your child that stealing is bad. Joining drug addicts, doing drugs is bad. Doing this is bad. If you don't tell your child like that, this child would just go to school, get education, but will not know the criminal part of them. And they will end up going beyond their rights. But
what would you say to a parent who is watching right now and saying, but my children are still young, how am I going to teach them the law?
Nurturing starts from childhood. The moment you, like us mothers, when you give birth to a child, you start teaching the child when you are even breastfeeding. You start talking to this child and the child grows knowing that I have to listen. When the child starts walking, you say, don't do this, don't do this. That's already you are teaching the child the law of the home. Apart from these laws of ours, police, but you start from the law at home. Child, don't eat while you're walking. That's a law. and this child grows knowing that eating while walking is bad. Don't talk in public, don't eat in public. The child will grow knowing that this is bad. Then in the future, as the child grows, this child comes to know that even this one is bad and this one is good. So for parents who are there, this nurturing starts from home. It's from home that a child knows to do things that will be done in the public.
That is true. Now, going back to our first source of discussion this morning, and you said that everything, whether the child will, the child's rights in a home will be protected or abused, it starts from domestic violence. We went through what domestic violence is, the forms, the causes, and the effects that domestic violence can have upon children. So the question now for us is, what can we do to resolve this issue of domestic violence? How can we ensure that we as parents, as spouses, we don't have domestic violence in our homes? And that's one, for us as parents. But two, what is the police doing when it comes to fighting this issue of domestic violence?
Okay. We have pillars in our marriage and in homes. The first pillar in a marriage is that of communication. When you strengthen the communication skill in a home, you will fight domestic violence. For example, if you're my husband and I'm your wife, and we have communication, strengthened communication in our home, whatever we shall be doing, we would be communicating. If I'm going to work and I delay to come back, I will communicate and tell you I will be late. Meaning, by the time I come back, you will not pour at me. You will not ask me. That is one pillar. First pillar in a home is communication, not even to parents, even to the children. If communication is good within the family, there will be no domestic violence. Second pillar is that of being transparent in whatever you do in a home. This one is a two-way, both father, mother, and it crosses even to the children. When a parent is not transparent, these children tend to cope up. When a parent comes back and starts deceiving ABCD, the child also will learn from the parent and start deceiving. So transparency is one of the pillars in a home. For example, when it comes to economic in a family, and one partner is not transparent, then there will be a problem. I'm working, my husband works, and I cannot even tell him how much I'm earning. I cannot tell him how I'm doing my expenses, but I need him to support me, yet I work and he works. This one will cause problem. There is no transparency in this home. And it has caused a lot, whereby some people leave responsibilities to the other, yet economically they are both empowered. Lack of transparency leads to domestic violence. Accountability in whatever you do. Actually, when we go to transparency, if a child sees that the parent is not transparent, these children see and they watch us. For example, mother sits at home, communicates, maybe is going to meet some friend somewhere, and these children are listening. Then when the father comes and asks, where have you been? I was just here. This child will copy from the mother and start deceiving also. Accountability in whatever you do. Because we've seen issues and we've handled cases where people entrust their partners with the economic. And when it comes to accountability, people don't want to make accountability for everything they do at home, be it economically, be it whatever you do. For example, I'm traveling from here to Kamoli. I have to account for this. I traveled because of ABC. When you become accountable for any act you do, you will not mess up. And even the children themselves will know that whatever I do, I have to account for it. If I've not gone to school and my parent has paid school fees, I have to account for this act I've done.
That's absolutely true, and we have to be accountable to each other. And in that way, you've pointed out clearly for us, we need to be accountable, we need to be transparent, we also need to communicate as parents with ourselves and with children if we are going to fight this vice of domestic violence. But experience is the best teacher, and for those of us who might think this is theoretical, I want you very quickly, as we prepare to go for a break, to give us an example from an experience that you've gone through as a police officer in a child and family protection unit when it comes to domestic violence. One that you're comfortable sharing, of course, without mentioning names, but one that will help us understand how serious this issue of domestic violence on children is.
On children, we've experienced so many cases of child abuse where parents abuse their own children, and if we were not sensitizing the community very well, it would escalate, because at times you find a real parent battering her own child because of losing 500 shillings. But because there is economical violence in the family, this parent takes it something very serious. A child losing 500 and you batter this child to the extent that this child gets injuries. I've seen these things happening at police. A child is sent to go and buy chapati, and this child eats chapati on the way, and a parent transfers the malice. I call it transferred malice because I believe this parent, the mother and the father, have their own annoyance, but they transfer the malice to children. So I've seen these things happen at police, but we do sensitize the community. We are always sensitizing the community. We are always sensitizing the parents who come to our office. We tell them how bad it is and the outcome of them abusing children. We've seen parents going to court of law due to child abuse, where they abuse these children physically and they injure them. We forward them to court. Those are outcomes. You fail to be sensitized, you fail to listen, you commit an offense like that of abusing a child, physical tortures, they forward you to court.
Yes, and you need to watch out as a parent. We don't want you to go to court because of those of such issues, such a vice. But it starts with you recognizing, with us recognizing that we need to protect our children. We need to enforce these rights that they have, and we are first and foremost the responsible bearers of the protection and safety of our children. According to a UNICEF report, 10% of girls in Uganda are married off before the age of 15 years, and 40% are married off before their 18th birthday. It is a stark and shocking reality in Uganda, as Uganda is one of the countries with the highest rates when it comes to child marriages and teenage pregnancies. And this is the conversation we are getting into now, and I'm entering this conversation once again with Sergeant Gonza Beatrice, who is from the Child and Family Protection Unit of Uganda Police Force, especially when it comes to Kira. Now, this issue of early child marriages, what is it and why is it such a big problem in Uganda?
Okay, welcome back. We talked about domestic violence being the root cause of everything in a family, where there is domestic violence in a family, the parents lack communication to their children, and you find these children joining peer groups. You find these children going beyond their rights. And culture has also caused this. There are cultures whereby people think when a girl grows big, have breasts, have the bumps, when a child is that age of adolescent, these children tend to grow big, and these people think these children are adults. However, if the parents knew that a child we talk of is this child who is below the age of 18, then we would all agree that it's bad to marry off a child who is below the age of 18. Even if it's culture, and really if it's known that somebody is marrying off a girl of 18, the police would come in and arrest those perpetrators. It would even arrest the parents and arrest the all people concerned. We've heard of scenarios where people plan to marry off children and police intervene and they stop the marriage. So this comes from the parents. How do you nurture your child? How do you prepare this child? How do you give this child away? So poor parenting has caused a lot. That's number one. Number two, still when we talk about domestic violence, these children, the parents don't give time to their children. And these children end up hanging. When they join the peer groups, they end up doing a lot of nasty things outside there. And from peer groups, they start abusing drugs. And when a child starts abusing drugs, this child will go. This child goes beyond control. We've seen so many children who are beyond control and they end up getting pregnant on the street. But the root cause is from the family. I always tell people that if you're a good parent, your child cannot go beyond this, cannot become unruly, cannot go beyond control of you. That's when they end up getting pregnant because they're on the streets. Nobody's minding about them. Nobody's counseling them. Nobody's talking to them. The parents have given up because they have their own issues. Some parents say the economic has really driven them very far to the extent that they don't have time for their children. If you don't have time for your child, then the child will end up going on streets, conceiving, getting pregnant. That's why we're seeing so many early marriages. Some children just marry off themselves even without parents knowing. Why? Children are no longer together with their children. Children are no longer talking to their parents, are no longer talking to their children. Yet we need this constant talking to our children. When we talk to them, you control. There is that control that you put on your children, that they don't go beyond you. But if parents are not together in nurturing, then we are having these issues. They are the root cause. Parents are not together with their children. They are not talking to them. They are not telling them what is right and what is good, and they end up on the streets. The children are drunk. The parents are drunkos at home. When they drink, they don't mind about the children. When they drink, they go on doing their own things, and children also take advantage of them. You find children moving on the streets. Also when it's holiday time, so many children move on the streets when even parents don't know where they are. And from there, you find children getting pregnant, even getting HIV. The sickness comes as a result of children, parents lacking control over their children.
That is true, and that's why it's important that like you said, we continue to build on the relationship we have with our children. Something else that has come to light as far as child marriages are concerned is the fact that many parents see this, and some parents see this as an opportunity to make money. We saw that in during the COVID-19 lockdown that some parents were not doing very well, and they decided to give off their children into marriages as a way of getting bride price. Is this something that is this true? And what is your advice to those parents who might be thinking of doing the same?
I really advise parents to think of the age limit of the child. When is this child an adult? They should put that one into consideration, that when a child is below the age of 18, is he still a child? Even if big, even if fat, even if having, this is a child and the child remains a child. So a parent outside there who thinks of marrying off a child below the age of 18, the long hand will get you. You will be arrested. And we are always sensitizing parents to at least come up and tell us. When we go in the community, we always talk to parents, we talk to local leaders, we talk to, in communities we have some groups which advocate for children's rights. We talk to them to come up and let us know who is doing this, who is abusing the right of this child at the age of 17, 16, where parents just marry them off, want to marry them off. And we've seen so many people coming on board telling us that something is happening in this community. Come and take a keen interest in it.
Indeed. And so now the question is, as the police force, especially as the Child and Family Protection Unit, what are you doing to fight these issues of child marriages and another issue such as domestic violence?
As Child and Family Office, together with the Community Liaisons Office, that is the CLO, we are always on ground. We are sensitizing the community. We go down in communities. We liaise with other stakeholders, the local leaders in the community. We meet parents. We go to schools, sensitizing the children. We sensitize teachers. We sensitize the community at large. We are always in the community telling them who a child is, telling them the rights of children, telling them what domestic violence is, the root cause of domestic violence. We talk about the outcome. We talk about early child marriages. We are always in the community together with the other stakeholders. We are in the community telling the community. By doing this sensitization, we prevent some crimes to be committed. Yes.
Indeed, and if there's someone out there watching right now and would like to report a case of domestic violence against a child or a relative who has had or seen the preparations of a child being married off, how can they contact police? Should they go there physically? Is there a number that they can call to report any of these matters?
Yes, one, in the community, the local leaders are our representatives. When you are in the community, make use of the local leaders. For anything relating to a child, the first person is the local leader in the community. Report these issues to the local leaders. If they don't listen, come direct to police. At every police station, there is an office of Child and Family Protection. There is a gender desk where cases relating to children and family affairs are reported. And even in Uganda Police, we have 112. It's a free line. 112 is a free line, and 116. Whomever is outside there, take note of 116. Call it, it's a free line. You are not supposed to pay. You just call, you let us know what is happening. Then, within your area, immediately you communicate. The police office around there, in the office of Child and Family, on the gender desk, the investigators will reach you as quickly as possible.
Indeed, and you've heard right there. Thank you so much, Afande, for taking us through how to fight these issues. One, of domestic violence, two, of child marriages, and also how to, one, understand our children's rights, and also how we can protect and enforce them. Now remember, it starts with us as parents. It starts by making sure that our environment, the environment of our home, is comfortable for the growth of our children, that we don't have issues of domestic violence between spouses, and that will help us keep our children safe. And then it starts with us figuring out any trials or tribulations that we might have. I remember the Bible talks about how we shall have trials and tribulations, but we have overcome. So we overcome certain trials, whether financially, psychologically, as parents, so that our children are protected from any of these trials and tribulations seeping through to them. But we are going to continue to talk about these issues as we want to have a better family and a better society here in Uganda. Thank you once again for joining us in Issues at Hand this Friday. We shall return on Monday. For now, have a lovely weekend and enjoy the rest of the programming here on Church of Uganda Family TV.